So, we need to find expected inflation for years 6 through 10. We can do this by finding inflation for years 1 through 10 and subtracting inflation for years 1 through 5, which is 3% a year. So the 10-year bond has a 10-year inflation premium built in. This means that for the 10-year bond, the inflation premium is equal to average expected annual inflation over the 10-year life of the bond. So we need to find this premium. We are given the real interest rate, our star, equals 3%. We know maturity risk, MRP, equals 0.15% times t, the quantity of t minus 1, where t is the time to maturity. And in this case, we know t is 10. So we plug that in and we solve and find that maturity risk premium is 1.35%. We know that the interest rate, the nominal interest rate, is 10%. So we need to find DRP plus LP if we want to solve for the inflation risk premium. We don't have enough data to find DRP plus LP using the 10-year bond because we're also missing IP, so that's like 3 different quantities or 2 different quantities. Since we're combining DRP and LP, we would need to solve for at the same time. However, we do have enough data to solve for DRP plus LP using the 5-year bond, since we already know the inflation premium for the 5-year bond. So for the 5-year bond, we know maturity risk premium equals 0.15% times the quantity of 5 minus 1, which is 0.6%. We also know that R equals 8%, the return on the bond is 8%, and the real risk-free rate of return is 3%. So inflation premium is the expected average inflation over the next 5 years, which we're giving is 3%. So now we can solve for DRP plus LP. We rearrange the above equation, the first one we see, and we find that DRP plus LP equals R minus R star, the real risk-free rate, minus IP minus MRP, equals 8 minus 3 minus 3 minus 0.6, which is 1.4%. So now that we have DRP plus LP equals 1.4%, we have all the information we need to solve for IP, the inflation premium for the 10-year bond. In order to do that, we know R equals 10, the return on the 10-year bond equals 10%, R star equals 3%, MRP equals 1.35%, and DRP plus LP equals 1.4%. So we solve for IP, which is equal to R minus R star minus the quantity of DRP plus LP minus MRP. So IP, inflation risk premium, is 10 minus 3 minus 1.4 minus 1.35, which is equal to 4.25%. We know inflation over 10 years was 4.25%, and inflation in the first 5 years was 3% annually. So we can solve for X, annual inflation, in years 6 through 10. To do this, we just use the fact that 3 times 5 plus X times 5 over 10 equals 4.25. That 4.25 is the inflation risk premium over 10 years. All we're saying is it equals the average inflation over each of the 10 years. So we know that inflation in the first 5 years averaged 3%, and inflation in the last 5 years averaged X. So we solve that equation for X, and we find that X times 5 equals 27.5. X equals 5.5%.